Hey, good afternoon. This is Shawn Dearie. I'm glad you're joining me on Facebook Live today, where we're going to have an informal discussion about cough and cold symptoms and when you should call to schedule an appointment with your healthcare provider. See, the thing is that these are symptoms and signs that we have all of the time. What I like to tell people, and what my primary goal for today is going to be, is that we're going to have a discussion where we're going to understand what's going on with your body when you're having the signs and symptoms of the common cold or other associated illnesses, and what do we do for those symptoms when you see a healthcare provider. Before we go into talking about what we're going to be getting into the kind of the meat and potatoes of this all, I think it's very important to make this distinction. We are all as individual as our fingerprints. We all have different health issues. We all have different medications that we take on a regular basis. There is no cookie cutter approach to medicine, as much as sometimes we wish that there were. It's just simply not the case. So what we do is we always look at your individual symptoms, your comorbidities, or your other health care issues, and then we develop a plan that works well for you. Something that might work well for one person wouldn't work well for a different person because they have hypertension or they have breathing difficulties. So I like to put this disclaimer out at the beginning just to help you understand that although we might discuss something today and you may say that, hey, that sounds like that would work for me, we want to always be careful that you have a conversation with your healthcare provider. Make sure that those medicines are safe for you to take. So let's kind of get into the meat and potatoes of it again, like I said, and let's talk about cough and cold symptoms and also some of the other issues in illnesses that sometimes kind of look like a cold. So I hear it a lot of different ways when patients come and see me in the clinic. I hear it as, I've got the funk, I've got the junk, I hear some names are more comical than others, and you really, everyone has their own way to explain it. But at the end of the day, when most people say, and most patients come in and say, hey, I feel like I have a cold, what we're typically talking about is an acute viral upper respiratory infection. What this is an infection that can have symptoms that include nasal congestion, can have a little bit of a sore throat, can have a little bit of a cough, can have some fever, some fatigue, a little bit of a decreased appetite. The way I tell my patients and the way I look at it when I'm evaluating somebody is that a virus, especially a cold, will kind of just hit you from here to here. It's a little bit of a lot. There's not one area in particular that is more pronounced than others. And again, we're all different. We all present differently. But at the end of the day, the symptoms are kind of here, a little bit of everything. You typically, you start it with either a little scratchy throat or a little nasal congestion, and then it progresses to everything else. Viruses are the by far most leading cause for these cold symptoms, and they are the only thing that causes a cold because it's a viral upper respiratory illness. There are over 200 different subtypes of viruses that can cause you to have a common cold. Different parts of the year and different times of the year, there's seasonality and variability with which virus you may actually be contracted to or be exposed to that causes you to be ill. And with that, sometimes there are a little bit different symptoms based on what time of the year you're experiencing the symptoms. But again, by and large, symptoms are nasal congestion, you have a little bit of a sore throat, a little bit of a cough, kind of fatigue, just not feeling great. While our first inclination, and it's understandable because I feel the same way if I get sick, is I want to get better. I want something that's going to make me feel better right away. Unfortunately, the best thing that we can prescribe is something that doesn't come in a bottle. It's called time. We just need time to get over these illnesses. Viral illnesses and the common cold typically last about 5 to 7 days for the duration of the illness. Typically, you'll experience the symptoms will peak around day 2 or day 3, and then you'll start to have a gradual improvement in your symptoms until about day 7 to 10 where the symptoms are completely gone. Now, again, you're like, well, I didn't want to hear that. And I get it, me neither. I don't want to hear that either. I want to get better right away. So sometimes we actually make some recommendations for some symptomatic treatment. Antibiotics are something that we very rarely, if never, prescribe for a common cold because this is not a bacterial illness. Giving you antibiotics with a viral illness, understanding that the disease gets better in about 5 to 7 days, what happens? We give you antibiotics, doesn't have anything to do with the cold that you experience, but the symptoms just get better on their own. So we think the antibiotics did it. Typically that's not the case though. Time is what helps you get better. But as I said, there are some symptom treatment that we can use to help you improve in your symptoms. Number one is good old-fashioned acetaminophen, Tylenol. Helps with fevers, helps with pain, helps with some of the achiness, and that can actually improve your symptoms, not necessarily shorten the duration of the illness, but make it more tolerable. The next thing we can do, in addition to acetaminophen, sometimes we can actually prescribe, and which is an over-the-counter medicine as well, would be an antihistamine with a decongestant combined. That'd be medicines, and again, this is no endorsement for one medicine or another, but medicines like Zyrtec D or Allegra D. Things like that can actually help block some of the inflammatory changes that are happening because of the virus and actually work to cause some decongestion relief and help with your symptoms. Good old-fashioned rest, plenty of fluids, and avoidance of too much strenuous exercise or stress is always a good thing with any illness to help you get better. Now, while we talk about the common cold, and if you are watching this, you have had the common cold. This is something that there are some estimates that there are as many as 500 million cases of the common cold annually in the United States. It's not atypical for a healthy person to experience sometimes 2 to 3 colds per year. So if you've had a cold, you're in good company. We've all had it, we've all experienced it. Sometimes though, we're dealing with an illness that is not a cold and is something that requires some further evaluation and treatment by a healthcare provider. There are a number of different illnesses, and we're going to kind of hit them one by one, and we'll kind of start at the top and work our way down. I'll run through them really quick with you, and then we'll talk about each one individually. In addition to the cold, you sometimes can experience what's called sinusitis. There is concern for something called pharyngitis. We also have issues with bronchitis, and then when we get lower in the respiratory tract, we worry about things like pneumonia, and then also, which is a perfect time of the year to discuss it, we're talking about influenza as well. So when I approach a patient and when I do an exam, I like to start from the top and go all the way down. So let's start with the top. Let's go into the sinuses. Sinuses are very easily inflamed and aggravated when you have a common cold. The technical term that we use when someone comes in and has increased sinus pressure, facial pain and discomfort, they'll have the nasal congestion symptoms. Sometimes they'll also have the associated ear fullness. That all happens because when you have inflammation in the back of the nose, the sinus pores can't drain as well. I think of it like a traffic jam on the interstate. When the traffic can't flow, that gets backed up into the sinuses and can cause some of the symptoms you experience. That's why in the ears we experience it too, because the eustachian tubes can't drain and causes you to have that swimmy, kind of a full head feeling. But getting back to the sinuses, what typically occurs is an acute viral rhinosinusitis. The virus that causes the cold symptoms very often cause you to have these sinusitis symptoms as well. When we think about viral rhinosinusitis, you guessed it, the number one thing that we can do is prescribe time. These are illnesses that typically get better. They run a 7 to 10 day duration, typically improving by about day 4 to 5, and hopefully get resolution of your symptoms by about day 10. Again, going back to that, everyone is different. There are anatomical changes, there are environmental allergens, there are a number of different things that could cause you to have an illness that lasts longer than that. But if we're talking in generalities, typically about a week or so is what you would experience for a viral rhinosinusitis. Now for that, I'll just call it sinusitis from here on out because that's a mouthful and I don't want to keep you here all day. The biggest things that we do with sinusitis is to work to reduce and relieve the congestion. In addition to medicines like the antihistamine and decongestant combinations that we can sometimes prescribe, there are some additional medicines that we can use and sometimes prescribe to help with this sinusitis. One of those that we use commonly are intranasal steroids. I'm sure you've seen commercials if you watch TV. One of the most popular ones, again, although there are a number of different ones on the market, both over-the-counter and prescription, is Flonase. Because we want to try to work to reduce this congestion and this inflammation that is causing you to have these persistent symptoms. If we can cause and promote drainage of the sinus cavities, that can help improve the symptoms and shorten the duration of the illness. Another medicine that can provide a little bit of benefit is a medicine called Mucinex, also called guaifenesin. That is a mucolytic. It's a medicine that works to thin the secretions. We very commonly prescribe it for the respiratory tract, but we also can prescribe it because the lining of the nose and the sinuses, there's also a mucous membrane there that produces mucus in response to the illness. So if we can thin those secretions, reduce the congestion and inflammation, and help your symptoms improve by draining the sinuses, that's going to help prevent this from becoming something that's more serious. Before I move away from the sinuses, that would be something we would have a quick discussion about with when those symptoms do get worse. What can happen, and what patients can sometimes experience, is that they'll say, look, Shawn, I've had these cold symptoms, I've been having this congestion, I've been having this sinus problem, and I've been trying to take Tylenol, I've been taking over-the-counter decongestant, I've been taking intranasal steroids to try to help reduce this, and I started to feel better for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden, boom, I started to feel worse again. Started to have more fevers, more pronounced facial pain and facial discomfort, and just symptoms that persist beyond that typical 7 to 10 day window. When we experience what we call double worsening of symptoms, we sometimes are experiencing a conversion from a viral infection to a bacterial infection. That is a lot of times secondary to that initial illness. So if that is the case, and if these symptoms persist beyond the expected 7 to 10 days, there may be a likelihood that you have a bacterial sinus infection. Again, being evaluated by a healthcare provider is going to help us be able to look at these nuances and to be able to have a discussion with you about what symptoms you're experiencing, where you are on the timeline of your symptoms, and whether we need to initiate antibiotics for your treatment. So we've spoken about the cold, talked about sinusitis with the congestion and the pressure and the pain and those sinus headaches that you can experience from that. Talked about how it typically is viral, but sometimes can become a secondary bacterial infection that would actually require antibiotics. If we move down from the sinuses, let's talk about the throat. Having a sore throat is a very common finding with the common cold. If we think about the changes again that take place in your nose and in the mucosa, in the tissue in your nose, we're dealing with inflammation and congestion, but we also deal with that postnasal drip that is produced by the body trying to actually rid the pathogen that's bothering you. It's pretty ingenious the way the body works. Our body is designed to get better. It doesn't need us. It doesn't need antibiotics typically. It's made to get better on its own. So what can sometimes happen is when you have this sore throat and these throat discomfort symptoms, you can actually have a little bit of a drip coming from the sinuses into the back of the throat. Produces that type symptoms that people experience a lot. The majority of the time, as with the other illnesses, pharyngitis or sore throats are because of viral infections. Again, the virus that causes these symptoms can also cause you to have some of the discomfort in your throat. We typically experience with pharyngitis with a viral etiology, meaning a viral cause of pharyngitis. We have those other symptoms. We have the cough, we have the congestion, we have the sinus pressure, that full ears, kind of achy, kind of tired. A viral pharyngitis is very common, and it typically goes along with the other illnesses that we're discussing, and typically, again, time, acetaminophen for pain relief, increasing fluids, sometimes warm saltwater gurgles will help with your symptoms and help relieve your pharyngitis symptoms. Just as with sinusitis, sometimes it can be different. The same thing goes for the throat. The most common infection that we worry about and that we want to seek prompt treatment for is for strep throat. Strep throat is a bacterial pharyngitis caused by Streptococcus bacteria. With strep throat, it presents a little bit differently than a common cold. Typically, we can see whenever we are moving with strep throat, and we typically experience the absence of a cough, we experience prolonged fever, we experience some swollen throat symptoms, and we also can see some stuff in the back of our throat. If that were the case, that would certainly be something that would prompt you to seek medical care for us to initiate antibiotics. Prior to moving into the lower respiratory tract infection and influenza type things, we'll open it up for a minute and see if we have any questions from the audience, and then if not, we'll move on to the next things, because I may actually discuss it here in a second. So let's talk about what we've got.
What over-the-counter medications do you recommend?
So a lot of it depends on the symptoms you experience. The symptoms for symptomatic treatment, over-the-counter medicines for fevers, medicines like acetaminophen or ibuprofen are great medicines. Again, understanding individual health concerns. So for fever, for aches, for pains, Tylenol is great, helps a lot. If you're dealing with significant nasal congestion and inability for your nose to drain, medicines like antihistamine and decongestant combinations like a Zyrtec D, an Allegra D, a Claritin D, great medicines to try. Also, over-the-counter Flonase is a medicine that can help reduce the inflammation that can help with your nasal congestion. With cough, which is sometimes a prominent symptom with these viral upper respiratory infections, there are some over-the-counter medications, and if you're anything like me, when you go to the drugstore, you look at the amount of medicines that they have, it's overwhelming. And I do this for a living, so looking at all the boxes, sometimes it gets to be too much. When we look for cough relief, one of the best over-the-counter medicines that we prescribe and recommend is a medicine called dextromethorphan. You'll sometimes see it on boxes as DM, Mucinex DM, other with a DM, Robitussin DM. The dextromethorphan is a central cough suppressant that helps to kind of reduce your cough symptoms while you're getting over the illness. So Tylenol for fevers and pains and achiness, antihistamine decongestant combinations, along with or in lieu of intranasal steroids like Flonase, and then lastly, over-the-counter cough preparations such as dextromethorphan to help with your cough symptoms. You have another question?
What are your thoughts on the Neti Pot?
Neti Pot is something that works very, very well, and it is actually recommended by some ENTs to help maintain patent sinuses. The biggest caution with the Neti Pot is to make sure you're using distilled clean water. You don't want to use tap water with this, because if we think about what we're doing, we live in an area, and all parts of the country have different issues from time to time with their water supplies. We don't ever want to put tap water, we don't ever want to put unclean, unfiltered water into our sinus cavities. Our sinus cavities are very close to our brain. We want to make sure we keep that area nice and safe. So a Neti Pot works very well. Sometimes it's recommended by people to use in lieu of medications, which I certainly don't think is a bad idea. I just would make sure you're using good, clean, distilled water from a bottle. You can go get a gallon jug of water and make sure you use that as opposed to tap water. I think that'd be just fine.
What percentage of the population with URI are prescribed antibiotics unnecessarily?
I think that number's high, because I think that there unfortunately is an expectation in our culture, and we want to not be sick. We want to get better, and I'm right there with you. If I'm sick, make me feel better. I think that we unwittingly believe that antibiotics are the cure-all. I think that there were healthcare trends 20, 30 years ago. I think that that was prescribed a whole lot more just kind of for prophylactic empiric therapy. I think the majority of patients that receive antibiotics do not need antibiotics for a URI, which is an upper respiratory infection. So if you purely have an upper respiratory infection, the significant odds are that this is a viral infection. Antibiotics will do nothing, but we ascribe benefit from antibiotics because the natural progression of the illness is just running its course. Well, you take antibiotics, I could give you a sugar pill, and after 7 days, if your symptoms are better, you're going to think that sugar pill made you better. Time is the biggest thing for upper respiratory infections. Antibiotics are typically not needed unless we as clinicians see that there are some warning signs or some other concerns that we have that you might have one of those secondary infections that we spoke about a little bit earlier. Another question.
When should I call my provider, and when should I go to a walk-in clinic?
It's a good question. If you are not established with a healthcare provider, then certainly a walk-in clinic is a fantastic tool to use, and I would make that recommendation because sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get in as a new patient to be established. Most providers in primary care, I know myself as well as my partners in my clinic, certainly treat and we see patients with acute upper respiratory infections and cough and cold symptoms on a frequent basis. I think more so than anything else, it comes down to schedule availability. If we don't have an available opening in our schedule, and if you feel like your symptoms are not getting better, then by all means, the walk-in clinic is exactly where you want to go. If you are established with a healthcare provider, though, I would recommend that you follow up with him or her first because they have a better idea of your long-term health issues, the comorbidities you experience, the medicines that you're on. We have a little bit more of a history with you. So we would prefer to see you if we can, understanding that the walk-in clinics are fantastic for helping us along with that as well. Question.
If someone in the house is sick, how do you keep others from getting sick?
Just stay away from them. Transmission is obviously person to person is predominantly where large droplets are the cause of the majority of the transmission of illnesses. These viral illnesses are very easy to pass to one another. Best things to do if we have someone in the home that's sick: frequent hand washing. You can never do it enough. Not the Purell, not the alcohol solution. Hand washing. We want the soap and we want the friction to remove the pathogens and the viruses and the bacteria from our skin. The hand gels work. Yeah, they're great to help if we're on the go, if we don't have access to soap and water. But at the end of the day, soap and water, sing happy birthday when you do it, make sure your hands are clean. The next big thing to do is someone who is sick, make sure when they cough or if they sneeze, as best as they can, try to do it into the elbow. Because what happens is, we'll cough or we'll sneeze, hot chew, it's on our hands now, we have large droplets that are full of that virus or bacteria, and then we start touching things. Some of these viruses can live for a couple of hours on a surface without any human contact whatsoever. So if you cough or sneeze onto a surface, touch an object, someone comes behind you 5 minutes later and touches that object and rubs their eye, rubs their nose, or touches their mouth, they just transmitted and received the virus that was transmitted by you by coughing. So coughing or sneezing into the elbow. Also, if you are the one that's sick, you wash your hands frequently as well. And those are some of the best steps that we can use.
I have had my flu shot, but my husband has not. Is he safe from me at home?
Safe from you in terms of, I guess if we're thinking is the influenza virus is the way that we develop the influenza virus every year. The CDC looks at all of the different subtypes of influenza that is prevalent and the ones that are most common. Based on the data that they get worldwide to see what are the most common strains that are causing influenza, we will administer the influenza vaccine that typically carries the 4 most common strains of influenza that you're experiencing, that we experience in the communities and in the country. If you got your flu shot, fantastic, good, you did the right thing. If your husband did not, he has an increased risk for developing flu. He cannot get flu from you because influenza, the virus, the vaccine, is an inactivated virus, meaning that there is no way whatsoever that you can get the influenza virus from the influenza vaccine. You may sometimes develop some symptoms, some mild flu-like symptoms, including a little bit of fatigue, maybe a little muscle achiness, just kind of not feeling 100% right, but that's okay. That's your body mounting the appropriate immune response. So if you are later contacted with someone who has the flu, you're going to be better protected. So in short, your husband is not at risk for getting the flu from you, but he is certainly at risk from getting the flu from everyone in the community, which, by the way, we are in the middle of flu season. So if he has not gotten it, it's not too late. You can still get that flu vaccine. There are very, very few contraindications to where people really should not get the flu vaccine. Everyone pretty much should get it, and that's going to help significantly decrease the risk of you getting the flu. And this will be my last point on the flu vaccine, is that even if you get a mild illness with the flu, and I hear this, well, I got the flu vaccine and I still got the flu. Well, again, there are a number of subtypes that are present and possible with influenza. We do our best to make sure that we're treating and that we're covering the 4 most common types of influenza, but there could still be one that gets through, but the illness is going to be significantly more mild and not as pronounced as if you didn't get the flu vaccine in the first place. Question?
If I have a fever, does that mean I am contagious?
Not necessarily. So a fever is the sign of the body trying to fight off the infection that is experiencing. This can mean that you have a mild viral infection, a mild bacterial infection. Yes, does fever coincide with pathogenicity, meaning that there's a virus or bacteria in your body? Typically, if we're talking about these types of symptoms, But depending on where we are in the duration of the illness, in the course of the illness, you typically are most viral, or you typically are most contagious early in the illness. The farther away we get from when you got sick with the cold, you may still have a lingering fever here and there, but you are not nearly as contagious as you would be on day 1 or day 2. So that's a little bit of a hard question to answer definitively. Fever is always a sign in this situation that the body is trying to fight off the illness, but it doesn't always mean that you are acutely contagious, depending on where we are in the stage of the timing of your illness. Any questions? All right, so hey, no more questions. I don't know if we have a time. Oh, we're good. Seems like we've probably spoken more. Brevity's never been my strong suit, but hey, if you have cough or cold symptoms, if you have not established with a healthcare provider, you're interested in getting to see somebody, be more than happy to see you. I certainly am taking open appointments, as are a number of my providers that I work with here at North Oaks Health System. If you're interested in scheduling an appointment, you can do so at 985-230-APPT. Remember, appointment, 230-APPT. Be more than happy to meet you, have a discussion with you about the symptoms you're having, and if there's anything I can do for you, I'm here to help you, okay? Thank you so much, guys.